Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Jamie Dawn, your professional psychic advisor, success coach, evolutionary revolutionary. And as you can see, I'm back in my home office and really excited to get my feet planted back on the Reno, Nevada soil. And thank you so much for those of you who are tracking where I am, what's going on, as well as supporting each other, because here we are, the first week, full week of July, and it's hard to believe, right, that we're halfway through the year. And what a year 2020 has been. And I know many of us are talking about, we hope that 2020 will never be repeated, and we'll look back and go, thank God that year is gone. And I think it's really important before we rush too far ahead, because I understand that as a collective and individually, we're experiencing a lot of pain. There's a lot of suffering that's happening, and it is activating more empathy and more compassion, hopefully, inside of ourselves. And sometimes it can be overwhelming with the amount of energy and emotions that we're feeling and sensing. And I understand that is difficult. I have noticed that for myself, especially around this eclipse we just had last weekend on the 4th and 5th, that I can pretty much cry at the drop of a hat. I mean, I can hear a song, or somebody starts talking. When I was flying back on Saturday, there was a child, probably 3 years old. He was a toddler, and he clearly didn't want to get on the plane. He was upset and all of that. And unfortunately, he had to get on, and his mom was being very gracious and trying to encourage him. And so were the flight attendants and that sort of thing. And as he walked past my seat, I felt the tears well up inside of me as I touched that sadness in this child, or frustration, fears, whatever that emotion may have been that was creating these tears for him. And I was grateful, because I think for me, having that element of awareness and that physical response to what is happening, or is in pain or suffering of another human being, or of an animal or a plant, that for us, that's an invitation to offer compassion. I love the practice Tonlin. Some of you have experienced that practice with me as I've guided you through it. And it's a practice that was introduced to me at Nine Gates Mystery School, which I love so much. And that practice, and Pima Chandran also uses that practice and introduces it quite often. It's one that we can breathe in the suffering into this diamond vajra of the heart, and exhale the antidote. So maybe we breathe in the sadness and we exhale happiness or joy. And we understand too that as we do this practice, the more that we are offering it, the more we can become compassion and love itself. And so, yes, I'm going to get to the astrological energetic pieces this week, but I wanted to set it up for us. I mentioned in my blog, thank you so much for those of you who read it and offered feedback. It was fun for me to write it in sort of a story type of sequence. And because it's really important to take some of this language of astrology and put it into practical terms, or to put it in a way that maybe we can relate to, because I believe we're made of the stars and earth. And so what is happening above is influencing, as these planets are moving around and that sort of thing, it's influencing us, and we're feeling the movement inside of us. And so the dance is to be able to pay attention to what's happening inside of ourselves, and seeing if we can't influence what's happening outside of us. So as we continue to work and channel the energies of frustrations or pains or fears or happiness or joy, elation, whatever the emotions might be, and the energy, and we cultivate this inner state within us, then what we may see reflected outside of us is that joy and that peace and that elation that we're feeling inside. And so all of that to say, there's not a lot of major planetary experiences this week, in particular, the week of July 6th through the 12th. However, I do want to set us up. We're in the last week of Mercury being retrograde in Cancer. I'm a Cancer sun. I can tell you, I felt this Mercury retrograde quite a bit in many ways. It's mostly affected my schedule and time. And Saturn being retrograde now in Capricorn, I have a Capricorn rising ascendant. So time and my schedule and communication has been bizarre. I actually made the mistake of, because I was on the East Coast and trying to navigate my calendar for this week, I actually scheduled 3 people at the exact same time one day. And fortunately, it's all sorted out, and I had to, reach out and say, I'm so sorry. Do you have flexibility? Can we move this around, kind of thing? And so thank you for those of you who were participating in my kerfluffle, and were gracious enough to be flexible with me. As I like to say, one of my teachers says this, and I keep referencing it: blessed are the flexible, because they're never bent out of shape. So I'm practicing that on a regular basis. I'm also wanting to point out Mercury retrograde in Cancer, for me personally, has reminded me Mercury's a trickster planet, right? And when it's retrograde, it has a way of playing tricks on the mind, or in the communication field, or in the connection realm. And with transportation, we feel like we're being tricked. It's like, oh, the joke's on us. Yeah, kind of is. And that's the invitation, is that maybe, just maybe, we can take this life a little less seriously. There are serious things happening. Yes, we take our practices seriously, but we really don't have to take ourselves too seriously, because we're humans, and we're going to make, I don't know if it's mistake is the right word, but we're going to have moments where it doesn't go exactly as we want it to. But remember, we don't always get what we want, but we do get what we need. And maybe what we need in that moment is a opportunity to go deeper with our practice. Or maybe what we need in that moment is to feel something that we haven't been able to touch on before, because it just wasn't the right circumstance. Or maybe it's an invitation to help another, or it's to be open to receive help from ourselves. And I can tell you that 90% of you watching these videos and listening and commenting, thank you, that you're probably an overgiver, and most likely struggle with being open to receive. And that self-care and putting your mask on first has been a lifelong practice. And so when this Mercury goes retrograde, this little planet that shoots the messages, back and forth from as above, so below, is the messenger God that went from, Mount Olympus down into Hades and back and forth. And so all this communication piece, when it's retrograde, it does have a tendency to slow down, or to get a little foggy, or even make us believe or think that what we perceive outside of ourselves or inside of ourselves is actually true, when it's not. Or we can change it based on our perception, but we may have more difficulty changing it based on our perception when it's retrograde. We may start thinking, because it's the mind, Mercury is the mind, we may start thinking that what we see is real, or what we see is permanent and it never changes. And those of you who are understanding and practicing the concept of impermanence, we know that everything is constantly changing and shifting and transitioning. So that's one piece of it. Mercury will station and go direct on Sunday, the 12th. Now, Mercury still has shadow period until August 1st. So we're still going to have a little bit of leftover residue of Mercury being a little confusing. Maybe our communications, our calendars, our cars or vehicles, or if you take subways or trains or whatever, because yes, we're still in the COVID time. So a lot of people are still wearing masks, which, is appropriate for those who, I'm going to keep saying, check in with yourself. If you feel it's appropriate for you, great. What I will say is, please don't make it a religion and push it onto others. I understand that what we believe as our truth is important. And that if for some reason you are witnessing a behavior from somebody else, because remember, we've got the North and South Node in Gemini and Sagittarius. We're working on these belief systems, releasing South Node, letting them go. And this dogma that can often happen with the Sagittarius energy. So we have to be careful that we don't create a religion, if you will, out of you have to do it this way in order to be a good citizen, in order to do this. What I'm offering is, please trust your own intuition. And if you believe that not wearing a mask or wearing a mask is appropriate, then do so. Make your decisions accordingly. And also, I will offer that for me personally, it's important that we do no harm. So if you believe that wearing a mask is offering no harm to another, go for it. Okay? That's Jamie's opinion. You can do what you want with it. Again, it's not about my dogma. And so enough of that soapbox, back to the astrology. The other piece of this that I will offer to you is that we have a Venus-Mars sextile happening, and it will continue as Mars entered Aries back last weekend, or excuse me, 2 weekends ago on the 27th of June. And with Mars and Venus sextiling, this is a great week to maybe have some conversations with people that we are either attracted to, and I don't just mean romantically, but I mean, could be, but also you can attract some very powerful, fearless, kind of happy-go-lucky, flirtatious, fun, lightheartedness, which I think is important in the middle of all this serious stuff that we're dealing with COVID, with being isolated or restrictions or, that sort of thing. So this is an opportunity that even if you're not connecting in person, and I see my ringer is going off. Sorry about that. But this is an opportunity to connect even in person where, do your social distancing, wash your hands, wear your mask, whatever it might be that you need to still connect. Maybe it's just doing it this way through, the internet. But, and yes, with Mercury retrograde, the internet can be a little wonky. But either way, it's important to continue to use the energy this week to put some effort. You'll have to reach out, you have to stay flexible, but have those conversations, make those connections. Because what you'll find is we have a new moon coming up in Leo 2 weeks from now, and there's going to be seeds that are planted, but we're always on this journey. And so what you can do with these conversations now is you can start gathering information and just learning a little bit more about maybe yourself, how you express yourself individually. With Mars in Aries, it wants to have that individual expression, and you can attract or connect on a deeper level with those who resonate in that individual space, meaning your personality. Let's say you're somebody who digs in, the intellectual stimulation, and you read all these wonderful books, and you may be like, hey, I have a friend, or I know somebody who'd really like this particular book or this particular piece of music, and I'd like to connect with them and talk about it a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if some new book clubs show up, or new interest in certain music groups or whatever start to get formed beginning this week. So I would offer that if you're wanting to negotiate, if you're at a job and you're needing to negotiate with your boss or with, those, maybe a coworker on some things that need to happen, this is a good week for negotiating. You may not make final decisions. You may have to be revisiting some things, but I would offer that because of Mercury retrograding, we're doing the RE thing, right? Is that you may be revisiting some old issues or old ideas that you may have had. And this is a great chance or opportunity to drive yourself through the issues and to actually create a little bit of I don't want to say, conflict, yes, but to create a little bit of stirring so that you can ferret out some of those other details that you may have missed before. And that by the time Mercury stations and goes direct next week, you may be able to come up with some final decisions that get implemented in August. So just to kind of give you an opportunity to play with this. I mentioned also in my blog that we're in our innermost cave on the hero's journey this month. And in doing so, we're being faced with our fears. We're being faced with maybe enchantment, because we've got Jupiter and Pluto canoodling. And so Jupiter expands whatever Pluto is touching and Pluto's influencing what Jupiter shows up. So just keep in mind, not all that glitters is gold. So part of the way that we can use and utilize the Mercury retrograde energy is to be able to kind of take a step back, go within, create a little space and say, hey, wait a minute, maybe I don't need to eat all of this Turkish delight. Maybe just one bite would be good. Let me take a step back and see if I still like it even. And just use that as an example. But if you get tempted, there is that shadow side of this week, that temptations, maybe temptation to overspend or temptation to gossip or temptation to start some sort of clandestine affair that really doesn't serve you. That can also be there. So trust your practices. Come back to trusting yourself. I think that's also what Saturn retrograding back into Capricorn is inviting us to do, is to come back and revisit some of the ways that we have forgotten or we've stopped trusting our inner wisdom. And we've started to believe, or we started to shape our belief systems around what everybody else is telling us is right for us. And I would offer that use this time, as Saturn will stay in Capricorn until December, use this time to come back to the lessons that you feel you need to master. And if that means that you're having to kind of create a little distance from certain people or groups or a person, so that you can just really go within and shore up and strengthen, really strengthen your own inner convictions, your own inner belief system, and then move into compassion and acceptance, that's a great time to do this. So I'll leave you with that. Of course, you can find me, jamiedawn.com. Once you listen, I look forward to connecting with you. If you need me, reach out, comment, like, share, subscribe to this channel. I'm so grateful to connect with you, and I hope that you guys have such a great week. And if you can't be patient with things, at least be gentle. And if you can't agree, at least be kind. All right, you guys, we'll talk soon. Have a good week.